did send, hopefully, I guess you got my email. And in my email, it has a summary of the discussion points that I wanted to touch on. And at the same time, when I state that hopefully this is interactive, I kind of define them in a way that can involve some conversation and try to anticipate some of the questions that you guys may want answers to as a result of some of the communication that Mayor Gusciore has sent around the community and his recent press release on Friday evening. I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to read it. There were some, it was an article in the Trenton as well related to the fiscal year transition from our current cycle, which is on a state fiscal year that runs from that runs from July 1 to June 30th, and also the calendar fiscal year that the proposed migration that runs from January 1st to December 31st. So I just wanted to start with the $73.8 million and the U.S. Treasury funding, the generous funding that it has given Trenton and other cities like Trenton, that has the demographic that we have. And because of our demographic, low income, we have a high poverty rate in our city compared to our suburban neighbors. We have a lot of immigrants in our community, and as such, a lot of the attributes associated with that particular population, many of our citizens and neighbors, they work in frontline, they're frontline workers. So this is why inner cities like Trenton have gotten the attention and the funding that it has received over the past few months, coming out of Washington, D.C., the U.S. Department of Treasury, via the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands where we are in Trenton. We have received our first tranche, which is we got, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. We received in May the $36.4 million. That is in the coffers of the city of Trenton as we speak. We are expected, or we do the next tranche next year around the same time, probably May 2022, in the amount of $37.4 million. And I shared the link if folks have the time, because I didn't want to, take a whole, evening going through every portion of the act. But I just wanted to highlight some of the most important issues, and also, the most important facts. And I guess the most important facts that folks were looking to understand was the guidance coming around the objective of the funding and the use of the funding. So there are each municipality government that has received funding has some level of flexibility on how they use the money. But one thing that we've heard from our constituents and our neighbors and our community, that folks wanted to have some input into, the projects and planning around this resource. But I haven't heard from the mayor. I have not received a schedule from his administration yet. I believe there's a committee that has formed that they're going to be coming up with a plan and a schedule of meetings for us to all participate in. And my meetings certainly do not trump those. But nonetheless, I'm just going to run through, if you guys click on that link, if you're at your desktop or on your mobile phone, one of the I just want to go through the use of the funds use of the funds, of course, is totally to assist our government and fiscal recovery as a result of the impact the pandemic has had. Is there to support public health expenditures, is there to address the negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergencies, including economic harms to the workers, frontline workers, households, small businesses. We all know that downtown Trenton and around Trenton, small businesses have been severely impacted. Many have shut down, closed, and some we suspect will never reopen. Impacted industries, and also, of course, the public sector. In the city of Trenton, we have a huge public sector that operate within our borders. Replace lost public sector revenue. So using the funds to provide government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue experienced due to the pandemic. So that's a major factor going forward as we start considering transitioning to the current, to the calendar year, because we don't know how much funding we're going to get from the state. And that's one of my concerns as to the reason why I'm very careful to give my support behind this without knowing how much the state is able to fund Trenton in this upcoming fiscal year. And as we make, if we embark on transitioning to the calendar year. And that factor is very important. And I want everybody to know that the amount of money that the state is able to fund us is going to have a great impact on our tax rate. And if we're going to convert during the transition period from one fiscal cycle to another, the requirements to do that are very aggressive. And we're going to have to complete a budget within by July 1st. And then December, another tax payment will probably be due in December in the year. So our taxpayers are already tapped out, and so now we're looking at sticker shock, right? As I would call it, sticker shock. You can potentially to have coming out of the pandemic. We've already just closed out on our fiscal 21 budget, which was late. We saw a small increase there, but nonetheless, to have a potential increase at the end of the year and not knowing the state commitment to Trenton, we should be very careful as to what we can bite off for our municipality. And I think there is a thought out there that because we have these added revenues from the U.S. Department of Treasury, that perhaps, I mean, it does say here clearly that we could use that funding for this purpose, right? So to balance our budget, right, and to meet our tax burdens. So we just want to make sure that the state, and my position is, and talking to some other residents in the West Warren, I would like to get your feedback, if possible, is that, folks are reluctant, will be very disappointed if we use our American Rescue Act plan monies to fund a budget to transition to a calendar year. Maybe we should think about or propose to the mayor, perhaps we can defer it until we could get in a better fiscal position. Because last year, our surplus, we were not able to raise enough revenues. The state didn't fund us fairly and adequately, so the mayor had to dip into $8 million large over at the Trenton Waterworks to bring in a surplus over there to balance the city budget. So we were, under stress there. So I don't understand how we're going to make it through the end of the year and meet the demands of the calendar fiscal year change. So, but anyways, Back to the other point around the 73.8 million and what it can be used for. I did mention that, of course, to replace lost public sector revenue, using this funding to provide government services to extend the reduction in revenue experienced due to the pandemic. Provide premium pay for essential workers. That's a biggie, and you're going to be hearing a lot about that in the coming days. I know that it's being proposed by the AFSCME workers, our city worker union, to provide some funding, a pot of money for those workers so that we can pay them hazard pay. So that's going to be something that the taxpayers of the city of Trenton want to consider doing. And of course, we are permitted to do under this act. Of course, we always use the funds to invest in our water and our utilities, in our water utility, our sewer utility, and of course, broadband infrastructure. And we know broadband infrastructure was very key, and that's a utility that we continue have to build out in the city of Trenton, and was very critical and in our school district, and making sure our children were able to continue their studies while, working from home, or, in cases of these crises and emergencies. So we can use the funding for that as well. And of course, overall, it states here, the U.S. Treasury says, these are the overall categories. The recipients have broad flexibility to decide how best to use this funding to meet the needs of the community. And that's very important, right? The U.S. Department of Treasury is saying that this community has a broad flexibility to decide how best to use this funding, so to meet the needs of their community. So that's where we go back to. It's very important to me, and I know a lot of people in this community and across the city, perhaps, that we have a voice in how this money is spent. And I think it would be a travesty if we didn't have the appropriate level of community engagement or community outreach to gather the input from the residents and taxpayers of the West Ward. I will work to support the mayor in getting that information from you guys, and I will have as many forums as possible to achieve that. So please, if anybody have any thoughts of how the money should be used, or you want to share any questions at this point, the floor is open.
Hey, Robin?
Yeah.
I do have a question. You had mentioned the mayor has the advisory group for the first tranche of money that was given to the city. How is that group's feedback working from the group to the mayor to the council people, so that it can be disseminated across the city? I mean, right now, I don't even know who's in the advisory group. It might be the same people as it was before, but there's really been no discussion of that. So do you have any information about that?
Yeah, no, I have not. No, I do not. And that's a very important question. And I would definitely take that away. And I'm going to make a list, from this call. That's something that we've been waiting on. And what I've been told by members of the administration, that they're going to be holding these sessions in the coming weeks. So unfortunately, not days, but weeks. We'll see. But I think that the committee and the persons who have been appointed as last reported, right? So he sent out his last press release related to that, and that's the last I've heard anything on that committee. Subsequent to that press release, if you recall, and everyone else on the call, a lot of folks came to the council meeting subsequently to that press release and said, I want to be part of the committee. No one, gave us an opportunity to submit our resumes and interest to be part of that committee. And I think the mayor took that, seriously. And I don't know if he has contacted any of those individuals who raised their hand and asked to be part of that, have a seat at that table. So so we'll see. But from my perspective, I'm going to keep asking about that committee and at least at best to get a schedule. And if anybody on this call would like to join that committee, please, again, shoot me an email or text. That'll be great. And I will make sure I pass that on, your interest on to the mayor.
Thank you.
But I do think that we need to do that sooner rather than later. Again, that is something that needs to be done, but that does not preclude, I don't want you guys to wait for the committee. And I mean, that's not necessary, right? So through this forum and through my email, rvaughan@trentonj.org, please send me, or Robin Vaughan at trentonwestward.org. I think you all have my email. You can respond to the email that facilitated this meeting. Send me your ideas, send the mayor your ideas, or send anybody on council that you feel comfortable with your ideas. Don't sit back and wait, The longer, if we can start compiling that list and talking about it, and the better, because if we sit around and wait, before you know it, from prior experience and history, the money will disappear out of the city, right? So let's start putting some ideas to it before others make plans for us. We don't want to sit around and wait for the state to make a plan for us to say at the end of the year, we got to, cover the shortfall in the new calendar year if in fact it finally passes, right? We don't know if it's going to pass, but it's going to be, I suspect there's going to be a lot of conversations around moving to that calendar year as we get more answers as to how much revenue, how much funding the state is going to be able to support. Where is it going to come from? Is it going to be transitional aid? Is it going to be capital city aid, or none at all? We don't know.
Can any of these dollars be used for mental health advocacy and mental health treatment, which is a major problem in the city of Trenton?
Oh yes, absolutely. Actually, that's one of the top, the two foremost bullet points on the Treasury, the U.S. Department of Treasury's website on how the money should be used. It clearly states that it's there to support public health expenditures, funding COVID-19 mitigation efforts, medical expenses, behavior health care. So when you talk about behavioral health care, you're talking about mental illness and things like that, and certain public health and safety staff, address negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency. So yes, absolutely. Because we got to really realize that, staying holed up in your home and being unemployed or being sick by COVID, or a family person's been sick by COVID, or even folks have passed on by the virus, and that has had a severe impact on mental health and depression. Can somebody mute themselves, please? So so everybody's stressed out in cities that have had faced the impacts of this pandemic, So absolutely. Can I ask? Yes, mental health and behavioral health care is one of the expenditures that is covered under this act. So any thoughts about the funding and any interest in joining the committee? Just want to, any questions about the proposed calendar year, the proposed calendar fiscal year, and whether or not, the city of Trenton will be able to meet that aggressive, do we have the resources and the funding to be able, the cash flow, or can we generate enough tax revenue to be able to make those payments come July 1st and December 1st, right? So that's the bottom line. And if we can't make those payments, where are we going to get the revenue from? Is it going to come from the state, or is it going to come from, tax anticipation notes we're going to have to borrow, or is it going to come from the $30 million surplus that the mayor said we're going to get as a result of not having to pay a pension plan payment until next year, April 22, which I don't personally believe, because at the end of the day, you're still going to have to set that money on reserve to make that pension payment come April 1st. That doesn't move. So, so we have to see. But I just want to share with you all that, my pressure will remain on the state. I think the state should stay diligent. They should stay obligated to Trenton to make sure that they adequately fund us, as they always have, regardless of whether or not we choose to move to a fiscal year or a calendar year. Whatever we choose to do, we expect the same level or better funding that we have always gotten. And just because we have the funding from the federal government does not negate them and their obligation to fund Trenton fairly and adequately. So I expect a level of transitional aid more than what we have. Murphy is in a re-election year, so he should fund Trenton. And our capital city aid, the $10 million that's guaranteed to the city statutorily, should definitely be increased, and we've been fighting. The mayor has been fighting for that. Some of our state legislators have been fighting for that, so that should be increased. And I just feel that the state just thinks that Trenton has $73.8 million. They got $30 million sitting in their coffers. We don't have to fund them. They barely funded us last year, right? The mayor had to go into the surplus for Trenton Water Works. So I have no confidence that they're going to fund us this year in any meaningful and significant way. So, and that's a major concern of mine as we move forward to try to transition to a calendar fiscal year and meet those tax payments, right? How are we going to raise that cash flow from our tax base to meet those tax payments come July 1st and December 31st? That's my most major concern. And I know that many of the residents here in the West Ward, meaning that our ward should be most concerned about this calendar year change, because we are the ward that has the largest percentage of home ownership, and we we contribute to the property tax revenue line item of the budget. So, and it has yet to see. We've yet to see. I have asked some of the pertinent questions to DCA. What are they going to give us to support meeting the tax payments and raising the necessary level of revenues to be on the calendar year cycle come this July, not next July 1st, folks, right? It's July 1st, 2021 and December 1st, December 21, right? So we have to turn around a budget in the next 60 days and then deliver payment at the end of the year. So I think that's a lot of stress, unnecessary stress for a city like Trenton, we're still recovering from the pandemic. People are unemployed, and we should not be faced with a potential tax increase. I know the mayor has not guaranteed that there wouldn't be a tax increase, but you can't guarantee that unless you know what the budget numbers are going to be. All right, so let's see. And DCA stated, I don't know if anybody was in a council meeting on Tuesday, DCA was very clear that they cannot, I asked them directly, what is going to be impact? Will the citizens of Trenton face a tax increase? And she said, well, I wouldn't know that until we actually do the budget, right? Which makes sense. So, but you get different answers. The business administrator, Adam Kroon, says that he's going to guarantee a 0 tax percent increase for the next 30 months. Well, I don't know how you're going to do that. I asked him to give me the formula and the data inputs, but he haven't delivered that yet. So we'll see. But in reading Mayor Gus Stewart's press release, he wasn't so absolute. You know, he said potentially it could be a 0%. But we know what our tax numbers are. We know what our budget was last year, and we know what levels of funding we historically have gotten from the state. And I'm not that optimistic. I think we should proceed with caution and continue the course that we're on and try to get our city fiscally healthy, hold the state to the fire, you know, until we can get them to pay their fair share. You know, hey, we need a stronger law department. We don't, historically, we have not had a strong law department, very weak. They have not challenged the state and pushed back in any way whatsoever. In favor, in the interest of our city, when it comes to the fiscal obligation of the city, of the state. The state, in my opinion, has been very negligent in the governance of Trenton and in adherence to the principles of the terms of the MOU. So, so we as a community have to hold them accountable, and because of those reasons, primarily because the state hasn't treated us fairly, I don't really have confidence in them. Come year end when we have to make that tax payment, I get the feeling they're going to increase our tax rates and hold back on the any state aid for us to cover our budget, and then tell us to rely on our federal aid. That's just my opinion, but I'm going to work to make sure that doesn't happen. Any questions?
Good evening, Councilwoman Vaugh. This
Hi.
is Slim White. Thank you for hosting this informational session this evening. You asked for possible suggestions. I'm wondering what the city has planned as far as summer recreational activities for our youth. Also, are there any summer employment opportunities for youth? I know I noticed internships, but are there any other employment opportunities for youth? And also, are there any plans to spruce up the downtown area?
Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't seen any other plans other than what you probably have seen that may come from Maria Richardson. She hires a lot of the summer help in parks and recreation and at the pools. I know that she's looking to hire at least 200 youth there part-time. There has been requests to the mayor to make available. We have a lot of projects underway in public works with the pavements of the streets, and here in the West Ward, Stuyvesant Avenue is about to get paved. West State Street is about to get paved. So there's a lot of, I know waterworks. Can somebody please mute themselves, please? Mike, I think that's you. Mr. Ronaldo, I think that's you. Can you mute yourself? So anyways, Ms. White, so what I will do is, but this is something that the recovery, the monies from the American Rescue Act can support. We do now have funding whereby we can increase the number of summer seasonal employees in the public works department, in sanitation and waterworks. So I will definitely make note of this, Ms. White, and share it with the mayor and his office of constituent concerns.
Also, what are the plans to spruce up the downtown area? Like to put up banners or planters or something to make it look more attractive and engaging?
Yes, no, I agree with you 100%. And that's all around the city. And I'm a complete advocate of that, and I support that myself, even around Calwater Park, right? Even on the perimeter of Calwater Park. So that's another area of investment that we need to consider, and which has been neglected for many years because of a lack of funding. But again, these are the type of things that that I was looking for from you all, and will continue to look through my emails for, and looking forward to hearing from you, because the money is here, as I said, the 34.6 million is here, and we got to use it. And again, I'm hoping that we don't have to use it to totally fund our budget in absence of state funding. That would be a travesty. And then we will be shortchanged. We won't be able to make the investments and beautify our landscapes across the city, clean up our landscapes, our streets, our parks. We won't be able to, increase hiring and for seasonal help, et cetera, to help do those things, right? So we need to, as a community, really engage and unify in a strong voice to ensure that these tranches of funding get used in our borders, in our streets, that we could visibly see the outcomes and the results of the money. It would be, again, to have this money leave our borders and we don't achieve what we all envision that this money can do for the city. It really can change the landscape of our city in a lot of different ways. Ms. Hoagland, I see your hand.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for recognizing me, and thank you for having this meeting tonight. I just wanted to clarify, it has been voted that we will go to a fiscal year, right?
No. Okay, let me clarify. Right now, currently, we are on the state fiscal year. We're on a state fiscal year. Our budget goes from July 1st to June 30th. We are totally aligned with the New Jersey state budget cycle, July 1st through June 30th. We would like to now, what's being proposed by the administration is that we move from that state fiscal year cycle, July 1st to June 30th, to the calendar fiscal year cycle, which is from January 1st to December 31.
Right. I'm sorry. I thought it was voted on during the last council meeting that would go to the calendar year.
Yep, it's an ordinance. It's an ordinance, so that was only the first reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we still have another 10 days, we still have opportunity to get feedback from the public. And second hearing is from 10 days from now. I think that's the next council meeting. So so we'll have the second reading, and at that time, we will pass the final vote to pass it into law, and then thereafter will be effective 10 days thereafter. Mm-hmm. So it hasn't passed yet. We have another vote to take. Mm-hmm. So that's why I asked if you have any concerns.
No, I prefer to go to the calendar year. I like January through December. It just simplifies things. That's the way I feel about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. It certainly does. And one of the I guess one of the benefits of that is that we have 500. I know there's a lot. We have 565 municipalities in the state of New Jersey, 565 in 21 counties. So out of the 565 municipalities, only 7 are still on the state fiscal year, and Trenton is one of them. But some, but there again, it aligns with this, with the goals of the state. It would be very efficient if the state of New Jersey can process 565 municipalities on the same cycle, right? That's very efficient, right? So, but again, the real issue is, how do we get there? We know what we want to do, and I don't think anybody is against going from January to December, right? And for all the reasons that you just said, Ms. Hoagland, right? It's easier, it's in line with everybody else. It makes easier for processing at the state. They can just close out the state's books at the end of the year. I mean, so all of those good things. Everybody at the same time, everybody on the same cycle. But the fact of the matter is, Trenton is, it's a price that we're going to have to pay to get there. And right now, can we afford that price? That's the question. So I don't think that the question is that we're not going to do the switch. It's just a matter of when and whether or not can we afford this now. So can we, if we had to do a tax increase at the end of the year to make the conversion, can most of our taxpayers afford that? Can take that hit again, right? So some folks say, oh, we're not going to have a tax increase, but there's no guarantee of that. And no one has been able to tell us what revenues are we going to get to offset that, to be able to support that premise, right? So if the premise is there's not going to be any tax increase, then yeah, let's go to calendar year. But no one has, DCA has not, the state has not come forward and made any commitment as to the level of revenue that they're going to be able to give to Trenton to support that transition. And I don't want us, the taxpayers, to be carrying the bag. Okay? They're going to come with us, oh, we're going to, because, your calendar year and we weren't able to collect enough tax revenue. We weren't able to generate enough cash flow to pay your tax bill at the end of December 31st. Then they're going to say, Ms. Hoagland, we're going to increase your property taxes. Now, so we as a city has to determine, ask us, do we want, is that a price we want to pay to go to a calendar year at this time, coming out of a pandemic? Our city is in a fiscal crisis. So can we fund this measure? That's the question. I know my tax is at over 10 grand. So 900 something dollars a month, more than a lot of folks' mortgage and rent, right? So, and I know many people here in the West who are paying $13,000 and $14,000 in taxes. So do we want another tax increase? That's the question. So to be able to achieve this. So anybody else has any concerns about the calendar year versus the state fiscal year transition? But it's a lot of discussion, right? So, will it be able to generate the surplus, as the mayor says, 30 million surplus? So, we'll continue to flush out more details. To get the mayor to or the business administrator, Adam Cruz, to tell us where's that 30 million surplus going to come from. Anybody has any questions or any ideas as to, where the American Rescue Act plan monies, how they would want to see it allocated, or what projects or programs or services in the city I know Ms. White talked about earlier that she wanted to see recreation activities for the kids, summer internships, more jobs, beautification of the landscape, particularly in our downtown areas where all our businesses are primarily located. Anything else that folks want to see? I know another individual mentioned mental health. So, Mr. Rinaldo, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Mike?
I hear you. Thank you. It's not a suggestion, but more of a question for my own edification. If I understand this budget switch process correctly, and if we do make the switch to a calendar year, does it eliminate or make more efficient the budget process for the city because it eliminates the reasoning that we have to wait to see what the state gives us before we can complete the budget? So that will, the way I understand it, make it a little bit more efficient of a process so we can expect budgets more on time and not, 10 months through the year. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that is the belief that the state will not delay telling us, how much transitional aid we'll get. But again, that's not necessarily true at all, right? The state will still remain on its fiscal year cycle. The state is not converting to calendar year. The state will remain on the state fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th. So they still will operate business as usual. Nothing will change for them. So they have the authority to tell us when they're going to tell us how much money they're going to put into our transitional aid or our capital city aid. So nothing's going to change with the state fiscal cycle. I don't believe that. I know there are some folks who believe that, but I don't see any indication of that happening. I would say so if the state was also converting to the same cycle, but they're not. Princess, Ms. Hoagland, you have a question?
I do, but not a question, but how I would like to see the monies allocated. And I would really like for us to put the money towards having more after school programs for our youth, and to have more recreational facilities available for our older youth that last more, that run up until 10 p.m. so that they have an alternative as opposed to hanging out on the street or being, I don't know, enticed to do something that may not be legal.
Yep, I hear you. And yes, folks have stated that as well, that we need recreational activity and entertainment for all citizens of Trenton, of all ages, right? Not just kids, young adults, as you just mentioned, mid-age adults, old adults like myself, right? Senior citizens, right? So we need activities for everybody. And that's something that we need to invest in more in entertainment, in the arts, and cultural activities for folks who are middle-aged and older, young adults, as you state, the ones who are at high risk, and we can get them jobs as well at the same time, get them employed. Again, the reason why we got the funding that we did from the federal government is because that was one of the impacts from the pandemic, is that we saw a huge increase in unemployment in the inner cities. So yes, those things can be funded by this act, by the American Rescue Act. So that is an excellent suggestion. I just want folks to know, as far as after school programs, now, as you all know, our school district has its own budget, and the state funds them separately than they fund our city budget. So the school district is also, my understanding, will be seeing an additional infusion of funding coming from the federal government. I know early in the week, Newark was reported that the city of Newark had gotten $177 million for their school district. And I just heard by someone in the administration but I can't verify it, that the City of Trenton School District had gotten an additional 43 million. So, so yes, that's something that I will pass on to Santiago Councilman Rodriguez, because he is the liaison to the school board. So they're going to have funding to offset the impact of the coronavirus as well. And hopefully the 43 million that they're getting, they will use it for the after school programs that you just mentioned, Ms. Hoagland. Ms. White, your hand is up.
I have another suggestion, a possible suggestion. Do you know if the city has any plans to renovate the formerly Junior 1/Martin Luther King middle school? Maybe condominiums or something. It was a beautiful building, had a brand new library, brand new swimming pool, and it's just sitting there. Also, I'm wondering, what are the plans for Trenton High West? Because that's just there. So these are two properties that could be utilized, repurposed something.
Yes. And I believe Junior 1, that's the Junior 1, right?
Yes.
Yep. And I know both schools are being worked. There are plans for those schools. They have been assessed and around what needs to be remediated and get them back up to par. But I haven't heard anything more from Department of Economic and Development or Housing as to what the plans for those properties are. But that's something that I will add to the list, and I will certainly get back to you, Ms. White, on those on your question regarding those buildings.
They infused a lot of money into Trenton High West, so a lot of renovations were made before they closed the building. Now, as for Junior 1/Martin Luther King, it needs a lot of work.
Yes.
And people have been inside and desecrated it.
Yes. And again, between the 43 million or the 40 some odd million that the school district is expecting, and in the city, the funding that the city has gotten, these are the type of issues that we need to address. Beautifying our landscape, getting rid of these vacant houses and vacant buildings, as you just described, Ms. White. So, and this is the reason why we really need the input from the community, because we really want to have some direction or guidance as to where this money should be gone. And if I'm getting the list together, if the other council members are getting a list, the mayor and his committee is getting a list, then we should be able to compile it accordingly and prioritize based on majority input, right? So if everybody says that they want to see more recreational activities across the city for adults, for senior citizens, for children, then that's something that the mayor should address if it's high priority, right? That everybody seems to be on the same page. So that's the type of data that we want to gather so that we can really aggregate it and prioritize it and have a single put together a single desire amongst the community as to what we want to see done with the monies, as opposed to, balance a budget that the state should fund, right? The state should fund Trenton, and we should not use our American CARES Act. CARES Act, not the CARES Act, the American Rescue Act, to fund a budget that the state should be helping us with. So we want to see some significant changes or investment in the areas of, recreation, summer internship, beautification of the city. And that's what I envision the money to be used for. And clearly, I'm hearing here this evening, that's what a lot of folks want to see. And I know that's been a sentiment since everybody heard about the money, the funds. So yes, and I know, and I will add to the list, public safety, right? We want to definitely invest in our fire and police and infrastructure as well. So there's a lot of work to be done in Trenton. Ms. Hoagland, your hand's up again? Mm-hmm.
No, please excuse me. I'll take it down.
Oh, no. Did you have a question? Did you have another comment?
No, I didn't. I just didn't take it down.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
I see. Ms. White, you're up.
Yes, I just had another concern. Do you know if there's any plans to reopen the hotel downtown?
Good question. Yes. Did you know that they got a new buyer? I mean, it was closed upon.
I heard, and I also heard that it might be used partially for housing for veterans.
Oh, no. I think there will be services for veterans, but there were half of the building will be still a hotel. That's
What's going to happen with the other half of the hotel?
It will be services for veterans, but not housing for veterans.
Okay, thank you.
I guess there will be medical offices or of that sort. Services, service offices for veterans, and other healthcare offices will be in that building. But there will be half of it will be a hotel.
Okay. And while I still have your attention, I'm wondering if there are any plans to promote the waterfront. We have that beautiful waterfront that we don't capitalize on. Philadelphia, they use their waterfront. Even as small as Burlington is, they promote their waterfront. And here we are, the capital, and we're not utilizing that. So hopefully maybe that would be something that we could address also.
Yes, 100%. And yes, and that's something that's a part of the Trenton 250 plan. If you're familiar with that, Ms. White, right? And that's part of our long-term, the city of Trenton's long-term economic development. So the waterfront, definitely. And that, and again, I don't want to sound redundant or repetitive, but this is what we all envisioned. If somebody say, oh no, Robin, that's not what I thought, but I believe most folks envisioned that this funding was going to have an impact on areas and spaces like that. Again, I would just hate to see the money squandered or controlled by the state to subsidize their lack of support, right? The state needs to fund Trenton, and regardless of how much money we had received from the federal government, that money is to help us recover economically from the impacts of the pandemic. The shortfall, the city budget shortfall has suffered because of the lack of funding from the state. We only got like $5 million in transitional aid last year. If anybody on this call was on the council meeting last Tuesday, the state put up a slide and they aggregated the amount of monies or funds that we received in state aid, and it was like 69 million. But I hope folks realize that that's not cash. A lot of that is just restricted funds, right? So again, we just want to make sure whatever fiscal year we decide to be moved to as a community or stay on, regardless if we state fiscal year or calendar fiscal year, the state should fund Trenton and fund our budget adequately and fairly, and they need to start paying their fair share of taxes. And we would have this problem, and we would have our whole all of the 73.8 million that was funded to help the city move forward, dedicated to all the things that we just discussed here tonight. Anybody else have any questions? No? Well, because we're at the top of the hour. It always goes very fast. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these questions. I'm going to formulate an email to Mayor Gussie about what we discussed here tonight. And specifically, I will get back to each and every one of you particularly about the committee. So, because I want these, the ideas that you shared with me this evening included in that committee. So, so keep in touch and don't be shy and raise your hands. And, you know, it's important that you provide your voice to this, to this effort, right? The money, the funds were earmarked for the citizens of Trenton, for our city. And we want to make sure it stays in our city and that the citizens, the citizens that it was earmarked for benefits from that. So benefits from the funds and that those funds are, you know, we are invested in the things that we would like to see. They were earmarked for that purpose. They were earmarked for our projects. They were earmarked for our programs and for the services in Trenton, in the city of Trenton. And you guys are residents, you're taxpayers of the city, and those public funds are for us. So raise your hand, don't be shy. It's for you. So anything else? I'm going to, you know, let you all go. And I hope you all have a, I'll just do another round robin. Anybody else have any comments or anything? I mean, anything else in the city that folks find concerning? That, you know, that's on your mind or, you know, anything? Nope, at least not tonight. Well, I'm going to have more of these calls, all right? And again, during the interim, do not hesitate to email me, text me, or, you know, just reach out. Let me know what your thoughts are. And I'll make sure I get them to the mayor and his Office of Constituent Concerns and get them, you know, particularly as it relates to the Rescue Plan Act funding. Okay? All right, folks? All right. Have a nice holiday weekend. Enjoy. Be safe out there.
You too. Thank you, Robin.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.